So you want to be the very best, at least when it comes to Gen 1 Pokemon. Well, I'm going to show you how you can do that in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. We're going to take Mewtwo from level 1 to level 20, but the first thing we got to do is start with the race. Mewtwo is created by genetically altering the DNA of the original Mew and bringing it to life through some various experiments. So I was somewhat tempted to go with something like a Simic hybrid, since that seems like combining DNA type of thing, but Simic hybrids tend to lean more towards animals, and most of the features don't really fit. So instead, we're actually going to go with a Reborn, because there's specific lines in the Reborn lineage that are about being brought to life through a series of experiments, and that's too fitting to go with anything else. When you become a Reborn, you get to choose an ancestral legacy. This would allow us to take some original race and get any skill proficiencies from it, as well as any climbing, flying, or swimming speed, which would be great because then I could probably grab some sort of flying race, but most of the flying races don't really fit with the overall aesthetic of being Mewtwo. So instead, we're going to take the basics, which allows us to just choose 2 skill proficiencies, and we're going to take Insight and Nature. Speaking of Nature, you also get the feature Deathless Nature, so you have advantage on saving throws against disease and being poisoned, while also giving you resistance to poison damage. You have advantage on death saving throws, you don't need to eat, drink, or breathe, and you don't need sleep, and magic can't put you to sleep. Then there's not too many default backgrounds that I think really fit for Mewtwo, so I'm just going to take Silver Quill Student. This comes from Strixhaven, a curriculum of chaos, gives us skill proficiencies in Intimidation and Persuasion, and it has a feature called Silver Quill Initiate. So you automatically have a handful of spells that are added to your spell list, as long as you have some ability to cast spells. And I chose this background because most of the spells are revolving around psychic abilities. Like at first level, you're going to get Dissonant Whispers and Silvery Barbs, and at higher levels you get things like Dominate Person or Rary's Telepathic Bond. Then before we jump into some stats, there's something I was very torn about, because there is a class and subclass that would fit so perfectly for all of Mewtwo's abilities, and that would be an Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. They're focused on more psychic spells, they get telepathic speech. At 14th level, they'll get a flying speed so you can float around like Mewtwo does, and their high level ability is Warping Implosion. And they even have psychic defenses and all sorts of psychic stuff, which is just so spot on for Mewtwo. But unfortunately, it is a charisma-based character, and Mewtwo is all about its high intelligence. And there's just no way that if I wanted to really stick to character, that I could give up the intelligence. So that's what we're gonna do. Diving into the stats, we're just gonna go ahead and max out our Dexterity, Constitution, and Intelligence, bringing them all to 15. That dumps our Strength, Wisdom, and Charisma. Then because we chose the Reborn, we can increase one ability score by 2 points and another one by 1. And like I said, Intelligence is the main thing, so we're gonna boost up our Intelligence by 2 points and then our Dexterity by 1 point. And then with all of that Intelligence, you'd probably assume that I'd just go with a Wizard, but you'd be wrong. We're going to throw in a bit of a curveball and start with a different class by going with a Rogue, which will work if you just stick with me for a second. When you become a Rogue, you get saving throws in Dexterity and Intelligence, and you get to choose 4 skills. So we're going to grab Investigation to give Detective Pikachu a run for his money, follow that up with Perception because it's always good to have, and then just grab whatever you feel like, but I'm just going to grab Stealth and Deception. Then at first level of Rogue, you get Expertise, allowing you to double your proficiency score in 2 skills. So I'll boost up that Investigation and Perception. Also at first level of Rogue, you get Sneak Attack, allowing you to add an extra 1d6 of damage as long as you either have advantage on an attack roll or the enemy that you're attacking has another enemy within 5 feet of it. The only caveat is that this has to be done with a finesse or ranged weapon. Then at second level of Rogue, you get Cunning Action, allowing you to take the Dash, Disengage, or Hide action as a bonus action. And then at third level of Rogue, that Sneak Attack damage upgrades from 1d6 to 2d6, and you get a Roguish archetype, which is where this build is going to start making sense, because we're going to take the Roguish archetype Soul Knife. The feature that you get with Soul Knife is Psionic Power. You get Psionic Energy dice, which are D6s, and you have a number of these dice equal to twice your proficiency bonus. And this makes it very good for multi-classing because it relies on your proficiency bonus and not any of your levels in Rogue. You can use your Psionic Energy dice on Psi Bolstering Knack. So if you fail an ability check using a skill or tool that you have proficiency with, you can roll a Psionic Energy die and add that number to the roll. The other thing you can use your Psionic Energy dice on are Psychic Whispers, allowing you to establish a telepathic communication between yourself and others. You can telepathically connect to a number of creatures equal to your proficiency bonus, plus 1 roll of that psionic energy die. But probably more importantly, the more fitting feature that I wanted to get from this subclass is Psychic Blades. So now you can do pure psychic attacks, because I know Mewtwo is very powerful, but he's not going to waste his time punching anything, and we need to be able to just attack something very basically with psychic ability. And Psychic Blades can do that super well, because it allows you to manifest psionic power as shimmering blades of psychic energy. So whenever you take the attack action, you can manifest a psychic blade from your free hand and make an attack with that blade. And this is just attacking with your psychic energy. You can make a melee weapon attack, or you can throw it with a range of 60 feet. On a hit, it deals 1d6 damage, and it happens to have the finesse property, so you can add your sneak attack damage to it if all the other requirements apply. And after you attack with the blade, you can actually make a second attack as a bonus action, but the damage die for that psychic blade is going to be a d4 instead of a d6. And really, I just wanted to dip into Rogue to get that ability, because now we're going to do a multi-class. And frankly, you can split up these levels in each class however you like, but I just wanted to throw a curveball early on, because now we're going to make sure we use that intelligence that we put so many points into and jump over to Wizards. Wizards, as far as their abilities, are pretty straightforward. The only complexity comes from the spells that they can choose, because they can choose a lot of them. But when you take your first level in Wizard, you get some spell casting, and you get the ability to ritually cast. So any spell that has the ritual tag, you can just have it in your spell book, and you don't need to have the spell prepared. Additionally, you get the feature Arcane Recovery. So once per day when you finish a short rest, you can choose to recover some expended spell slots. The spell slots have to have a combined level that is equal to or less than half of your wizard level, and none of the spell slots can be above 6th level. Then beyond that first level, all wizards do is get stronger and stronger spellcasting, and they get to choose an Arcane Tradition at level 2. So we'll run through the Arcane Tradition, and then we'll dive into those spells. If you want pure mental attacks, the Arcane Tradition you're probably going to have to choose is the School of Enchantment. It's one of the few subclasses that is purely mentally focused. At 2nd level of the subclass, you'll get Hypnotic Gaze, allowing you to charm a creature that's right next to you, forcing that creature's speed to be 0, and it's incapacitated and visibly dazed. At 6th level of this subclass, you get Instinctive Charm. So if you see a creature within 30 feet of you that makes an attack roll against you, you can use your reaction to divert the attack. And you can actually force that attack to hit somebody other than you, because you're really just manipulating their mind. Then at 10th level of this subclass, you get Split Enchantment. So if there's an enchantment spell that targets just one creature, you can now have it target a second creature. And then the last feature you get at 14th level of this subclass is Alter Memories. So when you cast an enchantment spell to charm one or more creatures, you can alter one creature's understanding so that it's completely unaware that it's ever been charmed. And while that spell is active, you can actually use your action to try to force that creature to forget some of the time it spent being charmed, which might fit even better in the Detective Pikachu movie. And then before we dive into any spells, we need to cover some ability score improvements, because we're taking Wizard all the way to 17th level, allowing us to get 9th level spell slots, but that also comes with 4 ability score improvements. We already have some ability to talk telepathically thanks to our levels in Soul Knife Rogue. So for our first ability score improvement, we're actually going to take a feat, and instead of worrying about any sort of telepathy, we're going to choose the feat Telekinetic. This allows us to increase our intelligence by 1 point, allowing us to round it out and make it much more useful. It gives us the Mage Hand cantrip, which we can now cast without any verbal or somatic components. The Spectral Hand can be completely invisible, as if you're just moving stuff with your mind, and if you happen to already know the cantrip, the range of the cantrip is increased by 30 feet. But the more important ability that you get from this feat is that as a bonus action, you can try to telekinetically shove one creature that you can see within 30 feet of you. When you do so, the target must succeed on a strength saving throw versus your intelligence DC, and if they fail, they're moved 5 feet away from you. And if they happen to be near a cliff, that's pretty helpful. Then our 8th level ability score improvement, we're going to go ahead and max out our intelligence. Our 12th level ability score improvement, we're going to take another feat, and we're going to grab Resilient. This allows us to boost up one ability score by 1 point, and when we do that, we get proficiency in saving throws for that ability score. So we're going to boost up our Constitution by 1 point, rounding it out, and giving us proficiency in Constitution saving throws, which is really helpful for maintaining concentration on spells. Then the 16th level ability score that we're going to grab is just going to be 2 more points into our dexterity, which helps our armor class since we're probably going to be relying on mage armor, and anything else that we want to do as a rogue. And now that we've covered those ability score improvements, let's go ahead and dive into the spell. We're going to focus mostly on psychic stuff since that's Mewtwo's bread and butter, but at the same time Mewtwo does plenty of energy blasts as well, so we need to have those covered on top of it. The only cantrip we really want to worry about is Mind Sliver because it forces an intelligence saving throw, which a lot of enemies are not very good at, and if they fail they take 1d6 psychic damage and they automatically subtract 1d4 from their next saving throw before the end of your next turn. So using this in a combo to force a saving throw on the next turn can be pretty helpful. The cantrip's damage increases from 1d6 to 2d6 at 5th level, 3d6 at 11th level, and 4d6 at 17th level, which those levels don't depend on your wizard levels, they're your overall character levels. Another cantrip that could be good to have is Encode Thoughts, so people have trouble reading your mind. And then when it comes to first level spells, you're going to want to grab Mage Armor and Shield, because those are some basics that you're just always going to need. And you're going to want to grab Silvery Barbs, because this is a very powerful enchantment spell, as you can use a reaction to force somebody to have disadvantage and give somebody else advantage, which is super overpowered as a first level reaction. Just to cover at least a little bit of energy blasting, you're going to want to grab Magic Missile as well, and I'd probably follow it up with Chromatic Orb, because I feel like he blasts out an orb of energy, and this allows us to choose the elemental type of that energy blast, whether you want acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, or thunder, but it just feels like it fit. When it comes to second level spells, you're definitely going to want to grab Misty Step for some short range teleportation, because we had to make sure we covered that, as well as Levitate, because you do generally just float around most of the time. Follow that up with Hold Person for a great enchantment spell, and then a great psychic damaging spell is Tasha's Mind Whip. It forces an intelligence saving throw, which is always very powerful, and it does 3d6 psychic damage at its base level of casting, while also forcing your enemies to not take any reactions until the end of its next turn. And on top of that, on its next turn, it has to choose whether it gets to move, take an action, or a bonus action, and it only gets to do one of those things. Overall, it's just a super powerful enchantment. At 3rd level, you definitely need to grab Fly, and for a big time energy blast, you're going to want to grab Lightning Bolt, and another good one is probably Thunder Step, because it allows you to both teleport and do damage to the enemies around you. At 4th level, you can use Confusion, as well as Odaluk's Resilient Sphere, which I feel like I've seen stuff about a whole psychic sphere surrounding people in the Pokemon series, so I felt like that fit. But the 4th level spell there's absolutely no way you can avoid is Ralathim's Psychic Lance. It's another spell that forces an intelligence saving throw, and the target's going to take 7d6 psychic damage and is completely incapacitated until the start of your next turn. 5th level spell I would definitely grab is Bigby's Hand, because it seems like a giant psychic energy that can hit somebody or grab them or do whatever you need to do. Additionally, at 5th level of spells, you probably want to upgrade your Hold Person to Hold Monster, and grab Far Step, because it allows you to cast Misty Step over and over again instead of just once. But you don't want to stop there, because there's tons of 5th level spells that apply to Mewtwo, between Synaptic Static, Telekinesis, Rary's Telepathic Bond, and of course, Dominate Person. All of them are very powerful and very fitting for Mewtwo. But then I don't want to cover every single spell because there's going to be a lot of them. However, jumping up to 7th level of spells, you're probably going to want to grab Crown of Stars, because it's just some floating energy blasts that just kind of hang out and you can throw them at your will. 8th level spells, you can grab things like Telepathy or Power Word Stun, but I would also definitely upgrade your Dominate Person to Dominate Monster, and you do get 9th level spells, so I would probably throw in Psychic Scream. It allows you to use the power of your mind to blast the intellect of up to 10 creatures of your choice within range. If they fail, they take 14d6 psychic damage and are stunned. And just to add a level of brutality to your game involving Pokemon, if the target's killed by this damage, their head explodes. It specifically states that in the spell's description. But even if they do survive, that stunning effect lasts until they can pass an intelligence saving throw. So they could be pretty much endlessly stunned. That brings us through most of the spells, but like I said, there's a ton of them out there that would fit really well. So if you want to see what I would choose for the full spell list, check out my Patreon linked in the description down below, where I have the character sheet for this build as well as all of my builds. And I really appreciate my patrons. They're awesome. especially CGC 2014, Halfstorm, Vidad Ametspahik, Godzilla Khan, Elisa Martinez, Anthony McDonald, Panda Milkshake, Alistar Nix, Ted Z, Andrew Nobles, Karkat Kitsune Z13, Viral Naravar, Daniel Galvin, and the Dino 21. Then going above and beyond that are the Dungeon Master level patrons that I play D&D with. And that's Shane Gilroy, Conman ZX, Cyberciety, Talon Starkey, Demiurge, Braden Aldridge, Eric Wade, Salvador, Devin Happy, and Kilo Kilo. Then going above and beyond anything I ever imagined is my God tier level patron, GameSteak. So a very special thank you to him because he helps me a heck of a lot. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button, and I'll be here hoping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session, especially if you want to play an overly powerful psychic Pokemon like Mewtwo in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.